YouTube, what is good? Today we're coming right back at you with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the best in general hitting tips so that you can go flawless in BR and hit World Series. Now, if you didn't know this already, World Series has been lowered to 800 rating, which means you don't have to play any games on Legend to hit World Series. So these tips are going to be mostly for players playing in the All-Star to Hall of Fame range. However, I do think this does work for all difficulties as well. But that being said, let's go right into the first tips for this video. So this first tip is not necessarily required, however, it is extremely recommended. You need to be sure that you are not playing on a TV. Play on a computer monitor that is either supports 120 Hertz, which is the biggest thing here, has a 1 millisecond or better response time, and can be at least 1080p. The reason for that is that these games will run better on these monitors. They'll look better, they'll look smoother, and your response times will actually be accurate to what you're inputting. Regular TVs are notorious for really bad response times, so if you are playing on a TV and you're ever thinking, man, I just feel really late on everything, that can be the reason why. If you're worried about the cost of these things, you can get a fantastic monitor for under $200 and it will last you a long time, so at least there's the thought process of that. Staying on the topic of equipment for MLB The Show, I am using what is called the GameSir G7HE. Now, this is, in my opinion, the best controller for Xbox. You can't use it on PlayStation, unfortunately. However, this is not an advertisement in any way. I genuinely do think that the GameSir is the best. There's also the SE as well. They're almost the same. The HE has mechanical buttons, so it's a little bit better, but if you can only get the SE, that's fine. I also do use Control Freaks. I just have the Galaxies. I use the low rise on the left stick and the high rise on the right stick. The right stick one's kind of unpopular opinion, but that's kind of up to you. And then I use a purple Control Freak precision ring on the left stick as well. So moving on, now that we are actually in the game, we're going to be talking about the settings and the camera angles that you want to be using for hitting. First, for the hitting interface, now there is nothing wrong with using directional or something like that if you just want to have fun in the game. However, if you are really trying to take your game to that next level, zone hitting is basically a requirement. The next couple options are specifically just for PCI anchors. I personally do not use PCI anchors. However, if you want to experiment with these and you think that you might do better with them, by all means, give them a shot. That's up to you. It's all personal preference. So the next thing now is going to be your PCI, your plate coverage indicator, and how it's going to look. This is also something that is personal preference. Some people prefer it to be a bit more on the screen. Some people prefer it to be a bit more minimal. Me personally, I think PCI center bat with no inner and no outer is the best. I don't touch the color or the opacity, and I do think that this overall is the best one that you can have. But again, though, this is something that you can experiment with and see what works best for you. Moving on to the cameras, there should really only ever be two hitting views that you use, and that is going to be both strike zone or strike zone high. The reason for that, these are the most zoomed in. They give you the best view of the pitcher, the best view of the ball coming out of the pitcher's hand, and these are just going to be the best camera angles to get the most vision of that baseball. So now that your equipment and your settings are right, the only true way to actually get better at this game is by playing. You need to get as many reps as you can. You need to play as consistently as you can. And ultimately, that is the only way to truly get better. Now, luckily, you don't need to play 800 online games to just get better over time. You know, again, this is not going to be like an overnight change for you. However, the custom practice mode is probably one of the best things for you if you are trying to develop your game. The beauty of custom practice too is that although the pitch mixes may be different in Diamond Dynasty and offline, you can actually change their pitch mixes in the rosters, and you can actually figure out, you know, what works best, how you can match the Diamond Dynasty kind of aspect to them. So let's say you struggle with a guy like Randy Johnson. Well, the beauty of it is you could play as whatever your favorite team is, whatever your favorite player is, and you could face Randy Johnson because he is on the Long Ball Beasts team. Or say you struggle against John Donaldson. You want to practice against John Donaldson. John Donaldson is on the Groundbreakers team. You know, this is a really good way where not only can you just kind of learn the game and learn how hitting hits and be a bit more like consistent with your hitting, but you could also kind of learn how to read other pitchers that you're typically struggling with. So once you are into the game, let's say you wanted to face Randy Johnson, you want to practice against him, I would not touch the pitch frequency. I mean, this is something where you kind of want it to kind of be a guess. You want to be able to try to read the ball out of the hand and not know what's coming. So I would not touch these. You can increase one of them a little bit more if you struggle with that specific pitch, but I would not completely remove one of the pitches because that kind of defeats the purpose of the practice. Now, one thing I would recommend doing in this, if you are doing custom practice, to put the pitch location to everything within the strike zone, because let's be real, in this custom practice, you're not trying to figure out if you could read a strike or not. Now, if that's something that you do want to practice, you could leave all of these zones unchecked, and you can just kind of worry about that there. But at the same time, if you are in this mode, you're most likely trying to get your timing or your PCI placement. Don't let the game waste your time. Make Randy Johnson throw only strikes for you, just so you can actually know, what is your true skill when the ball is in the strike zone. Another big point of contention that a lot of people have is, what difficulty should you practice on? Now, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, you should be practicing on Legend difficulty or GOAT difficulty, but in my opinion, for the vast majority of players in this game, that's not realistic. If you don't ever expect to be playing on Legend or GOAT, why would you practice on it? And I know I agree with everybody saying, oh, well, you need to improve and all that. However, if you're one of those players that's struggling on All-Star, in my perspective, I'd rather you learn how to master All-Star first and then work your way up to the higher difficulties. So the way I see it, and this is the way I practice when I do custom practice based on what difficulty I expect to be playing on. So I typically don't warm up if I'm playing an All-Star. Usually it's only for like the Legend games. So if I'm going into ranked seasons for the day and I'm sitting in that Legend tier and later on that GOAT tier, I will be warming up on those difficulties rather than All-Star or Hall of Fame. If I'm playing All-Star, and I decide to warm up for the day, I'm not going to be playing on Legend and GOAT because you're going to be early on everything that's going to happen. Now, you can kind of tweak the sliders and how fast pitches come in if you really want to do that. I don't recommend doing that because it's a little bit unrealistic as to what you see in the game. However, I do think that ultimately, practicing the difficulty that you expect to play on and mastering that difficulty first is what you should do before moving on to others. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is new to MLB The Show 25. This is going to be with the ambush hitting. Now, ambush hitting, in my opinion, can be a very useful tool. However, I also think that it could actually hurt you more than it can help you in certain circumstances. So, in my opinion, I don't see ambush hitting as a very useful tool outside of Legend and GOAT difficulty. The reason I say that is that if you're playing on All-Star, even a little bit of Hall of Fame, depending on the players that you're running, and any other lower difficulty, the PCIs are already pretty large. I don't think that you need to kind of worry about getting that PCI any bigger. The penalties, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It does get smaller, but, it's still in a decent size. You can still square it up. However, I do think that this is something that should only be used situationally. I don't think this is something you should do on every single pitch because ultimately it is a distraction. And I do think that is kind of the strategy that's a part of it. So if you're facing a player that's throwing you, inside sinkers every single pitch and you just can't hit them, use that ambush hitting. Try to utilize the extra timing, the extra PCI, all that good stuff, and see if you can get some good contact on it. However, if you're just playing somebody and you're not really understanding what he's throwing, if he's just kind of doing things randomly, ambush hitting really won't have that much use to you because it's a guessing game at that point. And I don't think guessing left and right is going to be good for the overall player in this game. But for those who are unfamiliar with how the ambush hitting works, so when you're up to the plate, with your right stick, you can choose either the inside or the outside part of the plate. If you guess correctly, your PCI will increase in size and your timing windows will get a little bit better in that part of the strike zone. However, if you guess incorrectly and the ball goes to the other side, you will be getting a penalty both in timing windows and in PCI size. Again, though, I don't think this is really something that's that useful outside of the top difficulties. And ultimately, unless you really do think that you know exactly what's coming, I would not recommend using this because I know for me, when I first started using this, in lower difficulties, I was more thinking about where the ball was rather than what he was throwing me, and my timing was all over the place. So really the only thing left for hitting tips is just kind of learning how your opponent throws. And I know the CPU throws a little bit differently than an actual player would in real life and, ranked seasons and all. However, I do think that getting the understanding of how these pitches are thrown, what do they look like out of the hand? What do the speeds look like? How could you recognize the break, where the ball's going? Will it be a strike? Will it be a ball? These are all things that are absolutely crucial to you being good at this game. And I do have a video that I posted as well of how to read every single pitch in the game. And I do think that is something that is going to be very beneficial to learn because that goes right into the hitting tips. So if you want to check that out, that's going to be in the description. There is going to be also just, learning patterns. We all know that online play, sinker, cutter, slider is king. So if you have a pitcher who throws, any combination of those three pitches, you could probably expect that most of the pitches that you're going to see are those. So it is another thing where you're warming up. You could focus on a guy like, say, Pedro Martinez, where he has a sinker, he has a slider, he has a good fastball. These are all things that you can kind of think about going into the game, and you can get your reps down and, kind of just practice, and eventually just get better over time. Another big thing too is being able to work counts. We are working kind of in a weird period with this game right now where, there's not really a lot of great cards, in terms of hitting and pitching. However, they all are kind of scaling to each other, but being able to work a count, make your pitcher work, the more pitches you see, the more likely you are that you're going to get something that you can hit. So if you're, understanding, okay, well, this ball is not even close to a strike to start, it's not going to end up being a strike, and you're able to work those 3-1, 3-2 counts and get good pitches, you will end up being way better at this game than you expected. Those are going to be the best hitting tips for you to get better in MLB The Show 25, so you can both hit World Series and go flawless. If these tips did help you, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Any little bit is greatly appreciated, and as always, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.